Alright, last time we covered Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. There was a lot in it. We got through it. Everybody's cool. We're moving on to verse 2. In verse 1, we can't put a time frame on this planet that we live on. It's all theory. Theories come from the church, 6,000 years old.
Period 5,775 years ago.
Okay, so according to Torah, Earth was created 5,700 and change years ago.
Theories come from science, millions and billions
You ever
of
wonder
years
how old
old.
the Earth is? Scientists estimate the Earth is 4.54 billion years old. This is all formed from the solar nebula billions of years ago. So how do we confirm the Earth is 4.
Okay, we don't know. None of us can put a time frame on what God did in verse 1. Okay? It's all speculation. Moving on to verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved on the face of the waters. If you just read over that and read through that, oh yeah, you know, it doesn't really say much. But what does the verse actually say? You know what I mean? And the earth, talking about the same earth, is the Hebrew number 776. And the earth was, okay? That word was, if you look at it, 1961. The word is used 111 times.
What we have to do then is take this word was. What does it actually say in the manuscript? It's very important. Let's call up the Hebrew word that is translated was. It is in your Strong's Dictionary, in the Hebrew Dictionary, 1961. It is Hayah, a primitive root. You can compare it with 1933, to exist, to be or to become, not what.
The earth became without form and void. It was not created that way. From science we get
more powerful than the colossal explosion that created it all. The Big Bang.
from chaos, from all this nonsense that happened out there, and that we got all that junk from nothing. To say God created something formless. God's word strictly says that he creates things in perfection, perfect. We're the ones who usually screw things up. The earth became without form and void. How did it become that way? Well, God did it. God destroyed it. Way at the beginning, as we talked about in verse 1, a world that was before this one that we're in right now. Ezekiel 28:15. Thou was perfect, talking about Lucifer. Thou was perfect in all thy ways from the day that thou was created. Created by whom? God created him. He is a creation. Never was a human. Always was a supernatural being.
He had rebellion in his heart and wanted to be like God and overthrow God. He was later addressed as Satan, which means adversary or opponent. How you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mountain of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought
That's where
down.
Lucifer's fall was. That's where Satan fell. 1/3 of the angels followed him. This is the reason why the earth became without form and void. What are you talking about? Well, if you look at it, the earth was without form and void. The earth became without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. What is the deep? The word deep is 84:15. That specific word right here is used 21 times. This isn't anybody telling you. This isn't anybody translating the word for you. This is the word that the old dudes way back in the day pinned down. Okay? The word means in abyss. As a surging mass of water. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. Where this water came from? When God created the world, created a bunch of water on it.
That don't make no sense.
The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Where did the deep come from? God destroyed that supernatural world before Genesis ever even began. That was the flood that destroyed the world before this one. The first flood, before Noah's flood, that we don't know nothing about, is what that is talking about. That most of the church denies, that most of science will not even come close to recognizing. We have a look inside of that old world. In Jeremiah 4 verse 23, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void. He's looking at the earth, and it was without form and void. He is looking at Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, what we're reading. And the heavens, and they had no light. Before light, I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. So there's mountains and hills. And I beheld, and lo, there was no man. This is before men. And all the birds of heaven were fled. Didn't see any birds. Nothing in this physical world was created yet. Verse 26, I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness. It was fruitful before, and now it's a wilderness. What he's seeing here, what we're reading, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord and by his fierce anger. Now come on, man. Where them cities come from? The earth without form is void, no light, no man, no birds, fruitful place turned into a wilderness. Supernatural cities broken down. 2 Peter 3 verse 5. This, they are willingly ignorant. Now what they ignorant of? That by the word of God, the word that we're reading right now, they're ignorant of. Who's ignorant? We all are. The heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, is the world that we're reading about right here in verse 2. And the church, shacked up in the same wagon, along with science, are willingly ignorant. That's what it says. I didn't make it up. Read the original language. Read what they put down on the page. This is reality. I'm not making this junk up. Verse 2 takes on a pretty different meaning now, doesn't it? Go read it.